Hey, welcome to Mojo Live, where we bring you executive coaching sessions from world class coaches. I'm Sean Johnson, and my conversation today is with world-renowned executive coach Joe Gianni. Joe is the founder, president, and CEO of a global top 20 training firm called Too Logical. And in this coaching session, we're talking about a new era in talent development called intelligent coaching. Intelligent coaching combines motivational intelligence and AI to give executives a competitive edge in leadership. So, our conversation today covers three main areas. First, what is motivational intelligence? Second, how has motivational intelligence and AI brought about this new era in talent development? And third, what does all this mean to me as a leader? A little bit more background on Joe. As an executive, Joe has led Too Logical for 3 decades, working with about 40% of the Fortune 500 and having trained leaders in 97 countries around the world. As a creative talent, he's authored countless leadership, sales, customer service, and human performance training courses and books. And as an executive coach, he works exclusively with C suite level executives, taking on only one or two new clients each year to help take them and their organizations to the next level. To discuss this and other concepts with inspiring leaders from around the world, apply to join the motivational intelligence community on Mojo at joinmojo.com. Now let's get into it.
And the more I studied it, the more I began to see that that was the overwhelming commonality of the most successful people that I ever met.
And just the empowerment of the conversations, how it just really motivates you. You don't come across people that impact you that way.
Because a lot of people could say to me, oh yeah, no, I get it. But yet they really don't get it.
This, if you really lean into it, can be life-changing.
Mojo's is part of our DNA and what we do during team meetings.
And I just looked at Randy like, oh my God.
I feel like that's made a lot of impact in my direct report's life because they're not afraid to talk to me.
But I started to see what this gentleman said in the podcast. And I was like, it was just kind of surreal because it was almost like he foreshadowed what I was going to be up against that point.
They would come in every week and ask me, Paul, how far would you like to get? That's when I told them 105%. And they laughed. And I said, no, 105% is where I'm going to be.
I think that that concept is one that everybody can buy into, and saying that I can improve 1% from yesterday.
An unstoppable state of mind that enables you and I to achieve everything that we want out of our professional and our personal life.
Motivational intelligence is the means for us as individuals to unlock ourselves, but also the ability for us, through the understanding of how to unlock ourselves, become a master of unlocking other people. You see, what's so important to understand is that from the very beginning of time, from the dawn of the industrial age, people think that the greatest challenge that businesses and business leaders face is telling people what to do or explaining to them and showing them how to do it. And that's key and it's critical. But the greatest challenge that we really all face and have from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution is actually getting people out of their own way to do the things that they need to do to really be successful, to actually execute at the highest level and at the most consistent level in order for them to rise and become a peak performer.
Yeah, I think it's something that, coming in early in my career, you look at it something like that, where I should just be able to tell people what to do and how to do it, and then they should just do it. And then you find yourself in some sort of a leadership role and you quickly find out that's not the case. But even personally, like the analogy when you and I first started talking that always clicked in my head was, there's a lot of things even for me personally that I know I should do. I know exactly how to do. I should work out more. I should eat healthy. And yet I don't. And it's this psychological factor that even when we know what to do and how to do it, there's something else kind of going on here that until you and I first started talking, maybe intuitively I knew, but I couldn't really explain or articulate it.
Yeah, it wasn't defined.
Right.
And what you just described there is, number one, absolutely true for you, me, and for all of us. But in the business world, in the corporate world, it's even more prevalent. And yet companies and business leaders spend an exorbitant amount of energy and time trying to develop peak performing talent, trying to execute and accomplish new, bigger, bolder goals every year. And yet many times are met with a lot of frustration because there's not the level of buy-in. There's not the level of speed to productivity And everybody scratched their head and say, why is that? Well, if you go back and just start looking at human nature, what you just described, it's the same thing. You know, I know what I should do. Most people, when they've been in a role or a job for any longer than 6 months max, they really know what they're supposed to do. They actually even understand how they're supposed to do it. And many people do it, but far too many people struggle and don't do it. And therein lies the challenge within most organizations from being able to rise quickly and really become a dominant player and a competitive player within their industries. This is even more prevalent now in a world where, you know, 1 6-month period of time, we might need a division or department to do certain things. And then 6 months later, we actually need to shift and do something else. These are the real challenges that our clients face and people are facing across industry. And having the ability to understand motivational intelligence really, truly changes the game for them, as it did for me decades ago.
Well, I think you bring up a good point too, that things have just progressively accelerated in terms of how quickly my job changes. Very rarely am I sitting here and 6 months later, my job is exactly the same. And my grandfather worked at Kodak for 40 years and his job changed maybe once every 10 years when he got promoted.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on something too, where a lot of people, they know what to do, they know how to do it. And, you know, some people do it and then some people don't. So maybe that's part of where we should start is who has it.
Yeah. Well, you know, yeah, I love that. It's great. Great point. Virtually everybody has motivational intelligence. We're all born with motivational intelligence. When you think about a toddler, they get in their mind the vision that they're going to walk and they start looking around. They see moms walking, dads walking, older siblings are walking, grandparents are walking. And they begin to say, well, heck, I want to walk. And they become obsessed with it. And they never hesitate. They don't start asking themselves, can I do it? You know, should I do it? Or even how to do it. They just simply observe. And through their senses, they just keep taking action. They pull themselves up right on a corner of a desk or a corner of a table, and they take a step or two, and then they keel over, and then they pick themselves back up again. They take a few more steps, and they keel over. Right? And each time, their mind constantly just keeps assimilating over and over and over again what it is that they need to do in order to master that skill or that ability, which is learning to walk, the ability to walk. And so it's true that when you and I see determination, tenacity, stick-to-itness, all the things that are readily recognizable in all people who are peak performers in the business world, they're the same exact traits, the same exact convictions, the same exact belief structure that is found in every single 2-year-old learning to walk. So you and I are able to see that motivational intelligence is not one to one and not to another. Motivational intelligence is there for all of us and within all of us. The trickiness is that over time, through early life experiences, we either get stronger at being able to keep growing and keep adjusting and keep adapting and keep developing ourselves, or we get stilted in ways. And for men and women who rise to a place of leadership and management of other people, this begins to give them an enormous insight and an enormous specialized knowledge that can literally be wielded as a weapon in building championship teams, in building the most successful teams in their companies and even within their industries. I've shared this with you many times, but I've shared with lots of companies, speeches I've given through the decades, lots of trainings throughout the decades. When I first came out of college, I worked for a tremendously talented, gifted leader, and right out of school, and it was with Macmillan Publishing Company. And this manager by the name of Randy didn't just run the most successful sales team in the company, but literally within the industry. And, you know, people in that industry, the college publishing industry, they knew his team. They knew the reputation that he had and what he had built. And when I first joined that team, I wasn't helping to make it a championship team. It already was a championship team. And from the very early get-go, it caused me to stop to really not only be guided and mentored and trained by him, but I was also constantly looking at why he did what he did, how he did what he did. And what I began to realize is that, yes, he was a taskmaster. Yes, he was a strategist. Yes, it was very clear cut that you followed certain processes. But what this man understood that stood him apart, that enabled him to have enormous speed to productivity of all new hires, and then constantly never have salespeople that would kind of cap out. They were always striving from one year to the next year, doing better and better, was because he understood motivational intelligence. He understood the need to not just develop people at a skill and process level, but to develop them from a belief or mind structure or conviction level. What Randy understood is that all skills, all abilities are first born in the seeds of the proper belief system, the proper convictions about self, about potential, about self-efficacy. And when an individual begins to understand that and has an environment like that, and now it's meshed with skill and process, the impact for that individual is truly profound.
Yeah. So what was that? And, you've talked about this before, and I know what it's been like for me, but what was that experience like for you coming into that team and being led and coached and mentored that way?
Yeah. At the risk of being over the top, it was magical. It was magical because, I came from a very low level of awareness of, say, of a 21-year-old. I knew what I wanted to be successful. I knew I wanted to learn sales and professional selling at a high level, but I had no idea of what that really was going to take. I thought it was going to take someone simply showing me what to do, coaching me on how to do it, guiding me, directing me. But what I began to realize very quickly was the philosophy that he was teaching me and everybody around him, which was that the greatest sale we were ever going to make was the sale we made to ourselves first, to get out of our own way and do the things we needed to do in order to be successful. And it's that combination that I began to realize at a very young age made all the difference, not only in my own career, but everybody else's careers that were part of that team.
Somewhat obvious in hindsight that Randy had such a powerful team because you weren't the only one that he was doing that.
Oh,
with.
yeah.
So how did you take something that was, it's a personal experience that was a very hands-on and was very unique. How do you go from that kind of personal experience to something that's more formalized, but this can be plugged into a company? Because a lot of times leaders like Randy are very rare and difficult to come across.
Yeah. How did I take that in a relatively short period of time, disrupt an industry and become a top 20 global talent development company in the world? And I'd love to say it's because, I had such talent, or our team that I built over the years, so talented. And yeah, of course, very talented people, but that wasn't it. It was in the organization and in the formula. That's what made all the difference in the world. Basically beginning to look at how do we begin to package this? And one of the things very early on is I recognized that I was a product of something very special. I realized that, number one, I had a deep passion to want to help people, true deep passion for that. But I also realized I had a specialized knowledge that was uncommon about how to really help people to rise rapidly and begin to accomplish not just what they wanted in their careers, but you are correct, it's transferable and everything. So it was helping people, which is the way Randy worked with me, to accomplish all the different things they want out of their life. I said the philosophy that he had taught me was that the greatest sale I was ever going to make was to get out of my own way and do the things I needed to do in order to succeed. But it wasn't just professionally. It was in every aspect of life. So when I finally made the decision that we need to organize this and really go into the entire learning and development industry and bring it to that industry, the very first thing that I had done was I formed a focus group, because I knew what I knew, but I needed to find out, what do other people do? What other people think? And I wasn't afraid to ask people for help. And so I started reaching out to people that I knew, and I started to organize people that were heads of HR, people that were EVPs of sales, people that were learning managers. And what I did is I brought them all together and I led a conversation to find out, what do they do? What do you do to develop your talent? And we're talking 30 years ago plus. As I was having this conversation with these very accomplished, very esteemed leaders, the sentiment of the group became one that training and development really didn't work so well. Like they didn't get big bangs for their investment. And it became pretty prevalent in the conversation early on. And so I kind of, did a stop. So I was like, what exactly do you mean that you don't really see a big return? And one of the folks in the group said, well, Joe, when we do the training and development, we only see about 5% of the people really truly embrace the ideas, embrace the strategies, adopt and work on the skill sets, and actually have a big impact on the results. Or maybe another 20%, we find that they might garnish an idea, but no sweeping changes in their behaviors and therefore no sweeping changes in their results. And then another 70% or so, we might see a spike in morale because we took them out of the day-to-day grind of their jobs, but no real major changes at all in anything. And so what I simply said to that group is I said, well, if that's the case, tell me about your best people. I mean, what do they look like? And of course, I didn't mean in a physical sense or agenda sense. I mean, in terms of who they really were. And it was pretty wild because they all started like shouting out things to me. They said, well, these are people that have tremendous initiative. I said, okay, what else? They said, they're self-starters. Okay, what else? They're goal-directed. I said, okay, what else? They said, they're highly adaptable. I said, okay, what else? They said, they're folks that are predominantly very positive. And they went on with a lot of other adjectives like that. None of them said that their best people were the most tenured or even necessarily the most skilled, but yet they would go to them all the time. And the people that took the most out of the training were these types of people. And I said, well, if that's the case, what do you actually do to train and develop your people in your curriculums at that level? What we call motivational intelligence. And literally it's like, deer in the headlights, they were flatlined, there were wide-eyed circles. And they said, we really don't do anything at that level. What they began to realize was something that I already knew at a very young age, that it doesn't matter how much they know what to do. If they can't get out of their own way, if they can't unlock themselves, they'll never, ever, ever really capture the full opportunity that they have in their careers. And the team will never capture its full opportunity.
In having that conversation with them, it becomes obvious looking at it that, yeah, okay, of course, all my best performers, they're very motivated. They're very accountable. They're very adaptable to changes. They're always the first one to raise their hand and volunteer for something. It becomes very obvious looking at it that way that, okay, they got a different head on their shoulders. They're thinking about things differently. Then the question becomes, can you do that? How do you explain to them the difference? And how do you explain, how do you go about that?
Well, can you really do that? Can you really help and evolve and shape the proper beliefs and convictions in them in order to unlock them so they can really rise and become a peak performer? And my answer is not only can you have to. And the most evolved leaders in every company, in any company, that's what they understand. Now, they might not be able to articulate that because they're not a professional trainer, but that's what they do. Going all the way back to that focus group, I just started scribbling up on a whiteboard. I'm not a believer in modeling people to death, but there is a very simple model or formula that we perfected back then. And it basically goes like this, that every single chief learning officer, every single HR trainer, every single line executive, every single manager, mid-level manager, what they're after is to help themselves and help the people they lead to be successful. It's not development and training for the sake of development and training. It's to really actually help people to be successful. So what defines success is the results, right? If people are going to be successful, it's because they're going to bring in the results that the company or the manager is after. But what we have to ask ourselves is, what is it that drives these results every day? So success equals results, but what drives those results? Well, it comes down to the actions that people take. So if people consistently take the right actions, they're going to consistently bring in the right results. If they consistently take the wrong actions, they're going to bring in the wrong results. If they do a mishmash, sometimes they do the right actions, sometimes they do the wrong actions. The sum product of that, of course, is going to be mediocre results. If you step back and you really think about it just mentally with me, 80 to 85% of most corporate talent development happens at that action level. So this is where best practices are identified and refined. This is where skill-based training takes place. This is where strategies are evolved, all at the action level. And not that, again, as I said earlier, not that the action level is not critical or important. It is, but simply telling people what to do or how to do it is not enough. So what we hope leaders to understand, and the way we explain it to them is, well, what really drives those actions every day? And it comes down to having the proper beliefs, the proper thoughts, the proper convictions. It is in the right beliefs that enable people to get out of their own way and actually do the actions, execute, and do the things they need to do to succeed. So another way I word that is I say people don't act on new ideas. They will not close skill gaps. They will not execute on any strategies or follow any best practices until they first believe that they're capable and worthy of doing so. In most organizations, what really management is all about is that action level. Coaching people, management and coaching all happens at the action level. Managers, especially really good and great managers, they set goals, they marshal resources, right? And they actually coach their people on the execution of the strategies and skills that they need to take every day in order to drive the result. That's what happens at that action level. The world, the business world, is very filled with some really good managers and some really great managers. But what the business world is woefully lacking, both 30 years ago and still to this day, is great leadership. Men and women who have the ability to unlock people. The corporate world has pockets of good leaders and great leaders. These are the men and women that everybody wants to work with. They attract the best talent. They have the best speed to productivity of the people they hire. Their teams are never complacent. They're always engaged and they're always striving and outperforming the year before results. Leadership is about mentoring. Leaders shape people's beliefs, their convictions. Leaders unlock people and enable them to get out of their own way and do the things that they need to do to succeed, or do the things they need to do to execute and drive the result they're after. And when a company is developed at both levels, they become literally a lethal weapon. That's what my mentor, Randy, that's what he understood. That's what he had the ability to do. And that's why he consistently had the strongest teams. This is not training for the sake of training. This is about driving results and moving an entire organization consistently. Big difference.
Yeah, no, huge difference. And I remember the first time you explained that to me, understanding the demarcation and the difference between management versus leadership. I remember, and you've told this story and I've seen it and I've done it with groups, the question, who in here has ever had a really great leader? And I've seen it happen, of 100 people sitting in the room, maybe you get 4 or 5 hands that go up, which, again, travesty, that it just shows you how rare it is. But that was, one of the things that you trained me to do is ask them, what were those people like? And the answers that they would always give is not, they were great at marshaling resources or they were great at task mastering or telling me what to do. Yep. It's always some function of, or in some version of, they helped me believe in myself. They gave me confidence. They had a bigger vision for me than even I had for myself. And that it becomes obvious, when you're asking these types of questions, again, we don't stop to think about that very often, but that's a huge difference. So it's not this crazy mystery that those people that get people to believe in themselves, that instill this level of confidence and conviction, they're the ones that are your best performers. And it's true across every company I've ever seen.
No, that's exactly right. And, in our journey, and you see this again, when we develop people at that motivational intelligence level, they begin to have a trained eye and they begin to really understand how to interview and look for people that have a high level of motivational intelligence already in place to bring them into the company. You've gone with me and some of our other lead executives into major cities and run open meetings. We've done them in Boston, we've done them in Houston, we've done them in Chicago, right? And then you've been to probably all of them. And in those meetings, asking what are the common challenges that they face. And those common challenges, the shout out is getting the right talent, right? Speed to productivity, having them engage and stay engaged.
Retention, lack of accountability, silos within the organization.
Personal responsibility, right?
Yeah.
All those things. And these are the big challenges that they will always voice to. And then I go back to where most of the corporate talent development that takes place is skill training, process training. And can you really ever overcome the real challenges that you and I hear them raise or shout out to with one more skill training, one more process training? And of course, the answer is absolutely not. There always has been something missing. And that something missing is motivational intelligence development.
It's even become more prevalent over the last couple of years. You know, you and I have talked about this. I've talked about this with people, but there's been this perfect storm over the last few years of all of these retention, engagement issues, you know, accountability issues, communication issues, recruiting issues have always existed. But then the last couple of years, you layer on top of that more challenges like mental health, like remote work, all of these things that layer on even more complexity and more challenges when it comes to people.
Right. And just, you know, snapshot that for a second. And is more skill training going to take care of that? More process going to take care of that? No. Or is more motivational intelligence development, nurturing going to take care of that, really address that? And of course, the answer is obvious. Every single week, I'm on Zoom calls with top executives in the pharma industry, top executives in the banking industry, top executives in the oil industry. All these executives say is, my gosh, the mental well-being is a major challenge these days. Being able to stay positive is a major challenge. Being able to stay engaged is a major challenge.
So I want to shift into the next part of our conversation here. We're in a spot, especially now with AI and technology advancing the way that it's advancing in even the last year. What happens when we combine motivational intelligence with a lot of these advancements in technology, and why is that important? Maybe give some historical context.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I look at technology and especially the evolvement of artificial intelligence as a massive, massive opportunity for the corporate talent development industry and for companies as a whole. I think that the adult learning world is one of the few frontiers that is yet to ever be disrupted totally and transformed like we've seen in so many other industries. And I think that there's a couple of very specific reasons. One is the technology itself wasn't evolved yet. And I know that firsthand because I know the power of it, but the technology is there right now. But the biggest thing is you have to have a disruptive model before you can actually take advantage of the explosive advancements in technology and specifically AI. And that's what we're sitting with right now. We are at the cusp of creating intelligent coaching, intelligent talent development. It's come to this place for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is because of what a very close friend of ours, an advisor of ours, Al West, said to us, right? From Aptus. He was the fifth person hired at Aptus, the unicorn company. And a few years back, he flew up and we whiteboarded what we were looking to do. And his comment was that people think it's the technology that disrupts the industry, but it's never the technology in itself. You have to have a true disruptive IP and then use the technology in order for it to really transform the industry.
What this technology has enabled is, instead of organize people into groups and then let's deliver a one-time class, it's, well, what if we could just put a world-class coach in everybody's pocket? And then what if we just trained the managers on, here's how to use that to coach and mentor your people? What we found is just that model, it's about 5 times more cost effective than just a traditional model.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it makes so many things, so many new things possible that weren't possible before. Now you have access to 24/7 coaching. Now me as a leader or a manager, I'm able to coach and mentor my people very easily at a world-class level. And so it opens up all of these new possibilities for redundancy, for personalization, all of these incredible things. A lot of the stuff we've talked about so far, that these are issues we need to solve. We're at a moment in time where technology is really enabling us to do that.
The only way to really help people to really grow and really truly move to higher levels of productivity is it has to be redundant and it has to be ongoing. And so what the technology is enabling us to do right now is take motivational intelligence and take skill and process training, combine it and have it be on demand and just in time. So a manager could be going into a recruiting meeting and saying, hey, I'm about to go in a recruiting meeting. What's the top 5 questions I need to be reminded to ask? And within seconds, Mojo and the AI will tell that leader. An individual salesperson saying, hey, I've got a big closing meeting ahead of me. what's the top 3 things I need to keep them in the forefront of my mind with regard to closing. And it will not only maybe give a strategy, but it will also give a mindset, a belief conviction to be able to, as a manager, say to one of your folks, hey, listen, I want to have a conversation with you about overcoming call reluctance and fears. And rather than trying to lead that conversation and trying to table set it, just say, hey, listen, I just want you to go ahead and listen to these couple of things. And then next week, let's get together. Let's just talk about it. It's changed the entire dynamic of coaching and mentoring that never could have imagined. I mean, people tearing up because the leader for the first time realized they can really help their people. As much as we have a tremendous handle on it, I think where it's going to be in another year, 2 years from now, it's going to be like night and day.
And that's why I've been so excited to launch the Motivational Intelligence community on Mojo. We get to meet a ton of new leaders, which is a ton of fun. But everybody can be a remarkable, life-changing leader if they have the desire to do it and if they have the tools to do it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Motivational Intelligence community. And I'm really excited about it because a really good friend of mine and a client of ours years ago said to me something that I never forgot. This is my friend Mark Colosi. Mark said to me, you know, Joe, you'll be the same person you are today 5 years from now, with the exception of the new people you meet and the books you read. There are millions of great people out there. And to be able to have a place where they can come together and really sharpen their eye to begin to see themselves and others that they work with at a much clearer level. It's pretty exciting stuff.
And the more I studied it, the more I began to see that that was the overwhelming commonality of the most successful people that I ever met.
And just the empowerment of the conversations, how it just really motivates you. You don't come across people that impact you that way.
Because a lot of people could say to me, oh yeah, no, I get it. But yet they really don't get it.
This, if you really lean into it, can be life-changing.
Mojo's is part of our DNA and what we do during team meetings.
And I just looked at Randy like, oh my God.
I feel like that's made a lot of impact in my direct report's life because they're not afraid to talk to me.
But I started to see what this gentleman said in the podcast. And I was like, it was just kind of surreal because it was almost like he foreshadowed what I was going to be up against that week.
They would come in every week and ask me, Paul, how far would you like to get? That's when I told them 105%. And they laughed. And I said, no, 105% is where I'm going to be.
I think that concept is one that everybody can buy into, and saying that I can improve 1% from yesterday.
An unstoppable state of mind that enables you and I to achieve everything that we want out of our professional and our personal life.